So, as it says, the session is about presenting with confidence, and that's exactly what we're going to look at. We're going to look at what does it mean to be not just a good presenter, but how to deliver a good presentation. And it's not just about the self-delivery. I think a lot of people put the focus just on themselves and how they deliver a presentation. But there's lots of preparation and practice that's required beforehand in order to ensure that your self-delivery is up to scratch and you really are delivering a great presentation. So that will be the basis of this session today. But I will start with giving you a bit of introduction to CIMA and really tie into how these skills are vital for careers, not only in business, but in finance and within accountancy. So as an introduction to CIMA, I'm hoping that you already know who we are, but CIMA is the Chartered Institute of Management Accountants. We're the largest body of management accountants in the world. So that is our specialization within our qualification. And I'll share some more information on that for you. But as an institute, we're actually part of a larger association where we work alongside the AICPA, so the American Institute of Accountants, and that forms a global association which has numbers represented here. You see, as a combined unit, we represent the entire breadth of the accountancy profession. So not just management accountancy, but also public and practice accountancy. And it allows us to ensure that anyone that takes the CIMA qualification and qualifies as a chartered global management accountant with CIMA is recognized by employers. And that's the purpose of our role as a professional body. We give you the relevant skills that you need, and we ensure that employers recognize your skill set within their organizations. So as you can see here, you know, some of the numbers does the talking for itself. We have our members and students living in 184 countries around the world. So it's a vast range of countries where we're represented. And I think the big number is that one in the bottom right corner, is that our members and students are employed by 150,000 different organizations. So that really just represents how much input and how much value CIMA members and AICPA members are really adding to their organizations around the world. So it's a huge community of professional accountants that we look after and we manage. As I said, CIMA's focus is management accountancy, and very briefly, you know, this is all about driving effective decision making. So we are not traditional accountants to train you to work in public practice. This is a qualification where we give you the accounting and finance expertise, so you are an expert in the numbers, but we give you a broader understanding of the business. So you can bring together the numbers and you can bring together the business acumen and insight to ensure you are advising people within organizations to make good decisions. All about forward thinking, it's all about adding value. And when you think about this is why presenting with confidence and presenting information with confidence as an accountant, as a finance professional, is key, because you need to be able to influence people to make good decisions. And being a confident presenter of information is going to allow you to do that. So as an institute, as a management accountant, presenting information is really, really a key employability skill for us. And as we already saw some of the numbers of organizations we work with, there are a huge number of organizations out there in the UK where you have opportunities to find graduate programs, so a full-time graduate role with an employer where they will sponsor you to do the qualification. So you can see we're very much an accounting qualification for industry, so you can work across any sector with the CIMA qualification. There's such a broad mix of organizations. If you are looking for internships or placements, then there are those opportunities as well. So opportunities for you to gain some experience in finance and then potentially progress onto a graduate program where they will sponsor you to do CIMA. And we have two websites where you can find opportunities. We have CIMA My Jobs, and we also have the CIMA Grad Club. And the CIMA Grad Club is that university portal, which I can share some more information with afterwards. But what's interesting about a lot of these opportunities is it's potentially something that you're going to have to do. If we think about presenting and applying for internships, placements, or graduate schemes, there's a high likelihood that you may have to present in one of these circumstances to secure a job. So it really is a key employability skill. In terms of where CIMA can take you and the roles that CIMA people do, Of course, the majority of CIMA members and Chartered Global Management Accountants would sit in finance because that's their specialization. But it's not a pure finance role because you're working with people across the business, across the organization to help them make good decisions. So you could potentially be a finance business partner or as a management accountant working with people across their different functions. Because of what we teach within the qualification, it's not just finance, it is business, there is management. We have a large number of people working outside of finance and qualifying outside of finance. And that's particularly true in management consultancy. So we work with a large number of large employers and we train their management consultants because that's all about helping businesses to improve performance. And that's what management accountancy is about. And then we also have people that once they qualify that progress into general management roles or even go into executive roles. So you can see there's a real mix of different opportunities where the CIMA qualification can take you. And again, all of these roles need you to be an effective presenter, to be an effective communicator. And we'll talk more to that as we go into the presentation. Just to finish on some of the CIMA content, you can look at this in more detail, but this is the CIMA qualification. It's a real mix of business skills. So you can see that within our enterprise pillar, we have managing performance, we have strategic management, and we also have a really updated module looking at the future of finance. So you have a module there about managing finance in the digital world, where we look at the changing shape of the finance function, new technologies that are coming into the finance function, like blockchain, like artificial intelligence. We have our financial pillar, which is where you get your financial accounting, your financial reporting, and your financial strategy. So that core technical expertise. And our performance pillar in the middle is your management accounting. So that's where you're drawing on that business knowledge from the enterprise pillar, you're drawing on that financial knowledge from the financial pillar, and you're using that to inform and drive good decision making within companies, and in turn, enhancing performance. So you will find financial accounting here, risk management, management accounting, business strategy, project management. There's such a broad mix of skill sets within the qualification. And depending on what you're studying, if you're studying accounting, business management, you may be eligible for some exemptions as well. So we will give you exemptions for anything relevant that you've already studied as part of your degree, and you can find that information on your website. So that's the very brief CIMA introduction. But what I want to get to is presenting with confidence, and I'll start the session by looking at this wheel that you can see here. And this is actually the foundation of our qualification. So when we develop our qualification, we work with employers and ask them, what are the skills that you expect from finance professionals? And this is what they tell us. They say, it's not just about having technical ability. You know, somebody could be great with the numbers and have the technical skills, but that's not going to be what's going to make them successful. That's not really going to add value to our business. They also need to have business skills. So what do the numbers mean in the context of a business, an organization, a project, or a decision? See, they go hand in hand. You can't just have one element without the other. And probably one of the most important sections of this wheel are the people skills. Because once you have great technical knowledge and you can put that into context with your business skills, how do you articulate that to people? How do you articulate that in a way that you're going to influence people to make good decisions? And this is where presenting skills comes to the forefront, because you need to be an effective communicator, an effective presenter of information in order to influence people. And then you also need leadership skills, and to be an effective leader and to really, drive people forward within an organization, again, your presenting skills, your people skills are going to come into play. And last but not least, a new addition into our competency framework, which sits in the middle, are digital skills, because you can use them in a number of different ways in order to display technical information, to enhance your business skills, and also when it comes to presenting. We think about a typical presentation of standing up in front of people in a room and presenting information. But as you can see, we're doing an online presentation skill session. So we're using digital, we're using technology to change the way we do things. And so presenting skills fall into the people skills, and they're a key demand for employers. It's going to be a key skill that you're going to be required to use within business and organizations. So if we look at presentations as an overview, what's the importance of them? I think I've already alluded to this throughout my CIMA introduction, in that they are a key employability skill. Any role that you find yourself doing in the future, you're going to be presenting in one way, shape or form, whether it's an actual stand-up formal presentation, through to an interview, through to a conversation with colleagues. You're always presenting yourself in one way, shape, or form. As I've said, it's used in interviews. You may have to deliver a presentation. You may go to an assessment center where you have to deliver a presentation as an individual or in a group. Or if you think about an interview, if you're being interviewed, you're asked a question and you're presenting information to people. If you have to do a video interview, you're presenting yourself to someone. So you're actually presenting as part of every day of your working life. You are presenting in one way, shape, or form. And why is it that employers value these skills? Again, you're developing a lot more than just your presentation skills. It's evidence that you are an effective communicator. So it shows that you've got strong communication skills. And that's always a key requirement from lots of jobs that you'll go out there and apply for. But it also shows a lot more than just the presenting. As I said at the beginning, it shows the ability to process information, organize and prioritize information into a well-structured order. And when employers or when anyone looks at presenting, they're not just looking at that self-delivery. They are looking at communication, but they're looking at organization, they're looking at planning, they're looking at your style of presenting. Can you present in a professional manner? Can you present information effectively? And a real key requirement for businesses is, can you do things on time? Can you manage your time effectively? And a presentation allows employers to tick all of these boxes and assess you across all of these 5 skills. But for yourself, it also allows you to develop these skills. And that's one thing that I found most beneficial. So when I was at university, I was quite a shy, timid character. And I honestly hated presenting. I had an absolute fear of presenting because I was quite a quiet character. I didn't feel confident in my own abilities. When I left university and I was applying for jobs, I managed to join SEMA on a part-time basis, and that was one of the areas I realized very quickly is that, okay, I need to develop in this area. I was very shy. I wasn't a great communicator. So I went out of my comfort zone and developed my presenting skills because I could see that there was an opportunity for me to grow and progress. Now within my role, I present to universities, I present at conferences, I present all the time. I pretty much present for a living for SEMA. And that's been absolutely fantastic for my career progression, because it's not just developed my presentation skills, it's developed my confidence, it's developed how I communicate with colleagues, and when I go to meetings with external people and how I communicate with them, it's improved my organizational skills, it's improved my time management, my preparation. So for you, enhancing your presentation skills, it will develop you in a lot of areas. And now I do a career that I love to do, a job that I love doing, but it's something that I would never ever have chosen at university. It just shows where developing your presentation skills can take you forward, most definitely. So before I go into my detail, I want to ask a question to you. So you can use the chat box again for this. I want to ask you, what do you think makes a good presentation? So think about presentations that you've seen, that you've heard, whether that's at university, whether that's at conferences, whether that's on television, on YouTube. What makes a good presentation? And that could be in terms of the presentation itself. That could also be in terms of the presenter. So in the comments, if you could just drop me a few examples of what you feel personally makes a good presentation. Okay, thank you, Melanie. So I've got some things coming in now. Appropriate vocabulary, I suppose. I assume you mean in terms of being able to understand what somebody's saying clearly and in an effective manner. Timing. So again, sticking to time, I assume, if they're saying that you're going to present for 10 minutes, that you keep to that. And clear points, so clear, understandable points for you to follow throughout the presentation. Absolutely, Melanie. Is there anyone from anyone else? Okay, thank you, Lee. So we've got confidence and knowledge. Okay, so somebody that's really confident about what they're delivering on. Knowledgeable, yeah, which is really a good point. Passionate is an interesting one, yeah. Passionate in the subject coming from the presenter, absolutely. And so you want buy-in, don't you, from that presenter? You want to be able to ensure, okay, they know what they're talking about. Giving someone reason to listen to you, and passion, confidence, and knowledge can absolutely show all of those. So that's quite interesting. So we've got a lot about the vocabulary, the timing, clear points, confidence, knowledge. Perfect. Okay, that will do for now. And remember some of those points, because hopefully I will pick up on some of them as I go through the presentation. So in terms of presenting and a good presentation, I've got the 2 I's, the 2 C's, and the 2 P's to start with. A good presentation must be interesting. You want something that you're actually going to be listening to. How many presentations have you heard where you zone out after 5-10 minutes because it hasn't been relevant, it hasn't been interesting? It has to be informative. So give something people to learn or to take away from a session. It should be clear. It should be concise. So I think that's some of the things that Melanie spoke for. Make sure that it's clear and understandable and it's to the point. Don't waste time talking about things that are not going to be relevant, and don't take a long time to get to a point. It should be professional. And again, I suppose that depends on the circumstance, but if we're talking about applying for roles or we're talking about in the job environment, of course it must be professional. But presenting can happen at any time, and it must be punctual. So again, that comes back to your timing and your time management. And when it comes to developing and managing a presentation, there's 4 things that you have to be considering. And this is where the CARS acronym comes into things. You need to think about your content. You need to think about your audience. You need to think about your resources, and you need to think about your self-delivery. So I think this is quite important, because I think when people think presenting, the first thing that they jump to is themselves. That's self-delivery. How am I going to present? How do I come across? But actually, before you get to that point, you need to think about your content, your audience, and your resources. And once you think about and prepare and go through those 3 sections first, it will naturally improve your self-delivery, and you can really start to think about that and focus on that. So that's the 4 areas that we're going to speak about today. So firstly, content. So when it comes to the content, you need to think about having an effective structure and plan to your presentation. But before all of that, before you get into your structure, what is the key aim for your presentation? Every presentation must have a key aim or a key outcome, okay? So what you need to think about is, before starting your presentation, what is the thing that I want people listening to this presentation to do or to think after they've heard it? What's the thing that I want them to take away? So in my case, my key aim is for you guys to be confident about developing a presentation and delivering a presentation afterwards. That's my key aim. So once I have my aim in place, that will form the basis of my entire presentation. The whole presentation from beginning to end has to focus on people walking away with that outcome, okay, with you presenting with confidence. So once you have that key aim in mind, then you can start to go into your presentation. Your presentation is typically made of 3 areas: your introduction or your opening, then you're going to have the body of your work, and then you're going to have an ending or conclusion. Now, how you prepare this, there's no set order. Some people prefer to start with their conclusion. This is going to be my big ending. And then they think about, well, what do I need to say during the presentation to get to that conclusion? And then they may end actually with their opening. How do I start this off? Some people like to go in a logical manner and start with their introduction. Some people like to start with their body. So what are the key things that I need people to know? And then they will think about, well, how do I open this and how do I close this? So there's not one set model of how you should approach that, but you should always have an introduction, a body, and an ending. So when it comes to an introduction, start by, of course, giving your introduction to yourself, but give people a reason for the presentation. Why should they be listening to you for the next 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes? What's the reason for them to listen? So give them an incentive. This is why you should be listening. This is what I am going to deliver. You can tell them this is the aim of the presentation. This is what we're going to receive as part of this, okay? Again, make it engaging. Make that introduction engaging. Give them a reason. Talk to them about why you're knowledgeable on that subject, as Lee spoke about. Why should you listen to me? And give them a bit of introduction and background into that. Then once you've done your introduction, you can think about your body, and the body is the key to the presentation, right? Because these are the key points that you have to deliver to achieve and meet your aim. And when it comes to presentations and sessions, it's typically recommended that you should talk about 3 to 5 things maximum through that presentation. So think about what are the key 3 to 5 things that I must tell people within this presentation in order to achieve my aim and my outcome. And the reason for that is if you have too many points and you have too much content within a presentation, sometimes people can zone out, they can become lost. And as we saw, a presentation should be clear and it should be concise. So you should get straight to the point of a presentation. So with that in mind, you should only have 3 to 5 key points. As you can see in my presentation, I have 4, which is my acronym: content, audience, and self-delivery. Okay, if I can ask everyone just to remain on mute, please, and turn off your cameras, that would be great. Thank you. So yeah, when you have your key points, prioritize these points as well. Think about a logical order and balance to them. So for key point 1, what needs to follow from that in order to get to 3 as an example. So make sure that prioritized and they're in a logical order to meet your aim. When it comes to your ending, never ever end abruptly. Never just say, okay, thank you, take this away. You want to have a summary. You want to have a conclusion, and you also potentially want to ask for questions. The reason that you want to ask questions is to make sure everyone's fully understood what you wanted to cover, so you can clarify anything like that. And what I would recommend is, if possible, I would ask questions and you would cover some of those areas, and then I would give my conclusion. And the reason that I would ask questions before I conclude is sometimes questions can take people in a number of different directions. And when I say that is they could take people away from the purpose of the presentation, because you can't manage what someone's going to ask you. And you don't want your presentation ending on a random question or something that somebody thought was funny to ask in the presentation. So ask for questions, let that finish, and then conclude. And your conclusion should just cover summary, the main points of the presentation. Sorry about that. The main points of the presentation, and finish on that aim. So you say, these are the key points that I covered, and this was the aim of the presentation. Okay, so you want to make sure the last thing that people remember, the last thing they take away, was that aim, the first thing that you thought about in the presentation. So when it comes to the structure and the content, please ensure that the material is sufficient to achieve your aim. So make sure you've got your key points in there, your key points of information, so it's clear and understandable to the listeners. That number 2, that the stages flow in a logical manner. Like I said, each point makes sense in where it's sat within the presentation. And also try to make sure that the stages are balanced. So you've got sort of enough time for each point so that you can cover each sufficiently. So that's your content. So you thought about your content, you developed, the base of your presentation. Okay, you have the content to deliver your presentation, you have your introduction, you have your opening, and you have your key points. Then the next thing you need to think about is your audience. And this is something that people wouldn't necessarily think about. Who is my audience? And there's typically 4 different types of audience that you can come across: hostile, friendly, indifferent, and impartial. So hostile is going to be, as you can imagine, an audience that doesn't necessarily want to hear from you, or they do want to hear from you, but they don't really like you for whatever reason that may be, whether that's personally or whether that's who you're representing or what you're presenting about. You have a friendly audience, which can be nice, I suppose. It's people that like you, it's people that are friends with you. You have people that are indifferent. Maybe they've been put into a room without their say-so. They haven't chosen to attend something. So whether they hear from you or whether they like what you say, they're not really fussed. They have to be there. And then you have impartial people. So people that will say, okay, let's give this person the benefit of the doubt. Let's hear what they have to say, and then we'll give judgment at the end. So based on these 4 audiences, again, if you can put your answers in the chat box, I ask you a question. What do you feel out of these 4 is the best audience to present to? What do you guys think? If you can put your answers in the chat box, what do you think is the best audience? And perhaps tell me why as well. Why do you think they're the best audience? Okay, Melanie said impartial. Yeah. Anyone else? Why is that, Melanie? Why do you say impartial? It'd be great to know. No? Anything from anyone else? Just one so far? Okay, so Melanie's chosen impartial. She says, because they will not give positive feedback only because they know me and like me, which is a very, very good point. Thank you. And that's an interesting one because when I ask this question, typically people will jump to friendly. They say, well, out of all the audiences, I would love, I'm sure the best audience is friendly because you're gonna get a good response, which is true. You will get a fantastic response from friendly people. But the issue is whether or not you've done a good presentation, whether the content was relevant, whether it was a good presentation, they're going to be friendly. You're not going to know whether or not you've actually done a good job because they're going to be nice to you in any case. So impartial is absolutely a great audience because, again, they're giving you the benefit of the doubt. They're going to listen to you and then they're going to make judgment afterwards. So you've got their complete, unindulted attention, which is fantastic. But regardless, having a hostile audience can be good because you've got an opportunity there to turn people around. So you can change your presentation to say, okay, if they don't like me at the start of it, how can I deliver this presentation in order to change their views on me or on the content that I'm delivering? That goes the same with indifferent. If you've got an indifferent audience, they're not necessarily interested to start with. So when you're developing your presentation, you need to think about how do I turn these people around? What am I going to do to grab their attention? As you can imagine, I work with universities, so I go into lots of lectures. So these are students that they have to be in the lecture. They've just come to their lecture to learn about a topic, and all of a sudden, Jason from SEMA is standing at the lectern to present from them. So in a lot of cases, I will have an indifferent audience. They're not really there to listen to me. They're there to listen to their lecture. So with that in mind, I have to think about activities and engagement to get their buy-in. I've got a large indifferent audience here. What can I do to make sure that they listen to me? And that goes to the content, but that also goes to some of the resources and your self-delivery as well, which we'll talk about afterwards. So this is why it's important to think about your audience, because depending on your audience, the way that you deliver your presentation will change. Maybe some of your content, maybe your introduction change, maybe your close changes, but your audience will play a key part. And this is one of the areas that students don't necessarily think about, okay? So you always consider your audience, and that will change and adapt your presentation based on that. Okay, so moving on to the next point, resources. So when it comes to resources, find out in advance of a presentation what resources are available to use. How are you presenting? Is it going to be face-to-face? Is it going to be a PowerPoint presentation? Are you going to use flip charts? Are you able to take notes with you? Is it going to be an online presentation? Is it going to be on Skype? Is it going to be on something like this platform that we're doing today, Zoom? So find out about that and think about how can I utilize these resources to my benefit. If you have to take notes, there's no problem with you taking notes, but use them to prompt you. So keep them short. I typically, if you have to use notes, use bullet points. Don't put lots and lots of detail on there, because what's going to happen is you're going to end up reading from your notes. And that's the worst thing that you can do with a presentation. You should practice and know your material before you start a presentation. If you need notes because potentially nerves, because it's a fresh piece of content that you're presenting on, always just bullet point, and the bullet point should be in place just to prompt and spark your memory to talk about that in more detail. So never ever read in a presentation, because then you're going to lose things like eye contact and that rapport with the audience. So think about visuals. If you don't just want to stand up and present yourself, are there visual ways that you can use? You've of course got PowerPoint and lots of different types of platforms like PowerPoint where you can visually express things on screen. Maybe you want to make it a bit more interactive and use flip chart paper. So as you're presenting, you can add things to a flip chart, to a board, to start to visualize and do that, you know, live as you go through the presentation. Is there video content that you can use? So rather than just a pure presentation, is there video content? Is there music? Are there different things that you can use? Sometimes there could be props. You know, how can you get people involved? Are there props that you can use? Are there engagement ways that you can get your point across without just a pure talking presentation? Also think about, can you make it interactive? You know, we talk about being engaged and something getting across to people. So are there activities? Are there exercises? Are there questions that you can use to engage people through the presentation? So consider that. Is there something that I can use, an exercise, an activity, to get my point across? Because I feel having an activity, whether it's a quiz, whether it's asking questions of the audience, it's going to ensure that they are listening to you. It's going to make sure that your aim is a lot more understood, hopefully, a lot more understandable. So a quiz is always a good one because you can make sure that it's a way to gauge whether people are actually listening to you. Maybe you ask them questions about the subject that you're presenting on, then you go into a bit more detail so you can gain an understanding of how much they know about. But you're gaining their buy-in throughout the presentation. And of course, stories are always important. So stories can bring a presentation to life. You know, we heard about people being passionate about a subject or being very knowledgeable. So if you can bring in real life stories, potentially about yourself, or even stories about someone that you've read about, maybe a practitioner, or, you know, something that you can bring the presentation to life. Really, just if it's a difficult subject, really puts things into context. It allows people to make more sense of maybe a difficult subject that you're presenting on. So when it comes to resources, and in the spirit of stories, I'm going to give you a real life example of what I've done for a presentation. So at SEMA, we had a competition internally called Idea Quest. And Idea Quest was pretty much like a Dragon's Den type competition where we had to come up with ideas for the business to potentially invest in. So we had to put forward a proposal. If they liked your proposal, you would then put forward to a live final. And in the final, you had to do an online presentation. So this platform that you can see that we're doing this session on now, we had to do a presentation to people around the world, and there were about 10 teams. So I got to the final, and I had to present on my investment idea. Now, when it came to the final, I assumed that lots of people would do a traditional presentation. They would be on webcam presenting, and they would have PowerPoint slides, and they would talk through a PowerPoint presentation, and then they would go to questions. I could have done that, but I felt, okay, everyone's going to do that. How can my presentation be unique? How can I stand out in this presentation? So I thought about my resources. What resources do I have? What could I use here? Because in theory, it's online. I could use a lot of different resources. So based on that, hopefully you can see this video. I'm not going to play all of it, but this is what I did for my presentation.
We interrupt this Idea Quest pitch to bring you a breaking news story.
Welcome to the Association News. I'm Barry Harding. Remaining competitive and relevant has become increasingly challenging. There are rapid changes happening to the environment all around us. It's not all doom and gloom, however, as with these challenges and changes come many opportunities. There is an ever-growing e-learning market valued at over $165 billion and is likely to exceed $240 billion by 2023. People are looking at different ways and options to keep their skills relevant and up to date for personal and professional development. And this, coupled with a large audience interested in parts of the SEMA syllabus without becoming a CGMA, there is a real opportunity for the association to reach out to a new audience. I'll leave it there, but hopefully from that you get the gist of what I was talking about. So I could have done the standard webcam PowerPoint slide presentation, I thought, what can I do to really stand out from the crowd? What am I going to do to make the panel of judges remember my presentation? So as you can see, maybe I went a bit over the top. I did a news broadcast. So rather than me presenting, I developed a video beforehand with a friend who's great at editing. As you can see, I didn't have to do that all myself, but we presented it in a news broadcast. And that way, people bought into it. They stood up and they listened because they'd been listening to PowerPoint presentations for the past 40, 50 minutes. And then there was a new news broadcast that come on. As it progresses, we went a stage further. The solution? SEMA Evolve. Head over to Brad Powers, who's standing by with Jason Knight, Manager of Student Recruitment. Over to you, Brad.
Thank you very much, Barry. Jason, thank you very much for joining us today. Tell us a little bit about your solution.
So you can see, Brad, we went into more detail. We had an interview, and unfortunately, my idea didn't win because the investment was too high. But I did win Best Presenter because it was innovative. It made me stand out. It was unique, and to this day, I still get people coming over to me from around the world in our offices when they come to London for the first time to shake my hand and remember this presentation. So you can see how you can really use resources to your benefit and think, how can I make this presentation absolutely unique and memorable? Okay, move on. So after resources, the last thing you need to consider is your self-delivery. So we've looked at content, okay? So you've got your aim and you've developed all of your presentation and your content. We've considered our audience and we've tweaked and we've tailored our content based on who we are presenting to. We've thought about our resources. So we thought about activities, we've thought about resources that we can use to really bring our presentation to life, to make us stand out. And now you've done all of this, I think you won't have any issue with your self-delivery because you've prepared properly. So lots of this will come forward. So then you can think about your self-delivery. So think about your body language, think about your vocal delivery. So when it comes to non-verbal communication, think about eye contact. When you're presenting to people, and this is in person, of course, because you can't see me, you can't see whether I'm looking at you or not, but in person, make sure that you're looking at the entire audience. Don't just look at one person or focus at one area of the room. You need to scan the entire room throughout the presentation. Make sure that everyone feels that they're actively involved in that. When it comes to your posture and your hands, make sure that you have open body language. So don't stand with your arms crossed. Don't put your hands in your pockets, and don't be fiddling with your hands. Try to keep your hands quite open. If you can present with your hands as well, that is always of a great benefit. And also try to avoid physical barriers. So if there's a table in your way when you're presenting or you're behind a lectern, walk out, walk away from the table, walk away from the lectern. Try to have no barriers between you and your audience because you want to have them as engaged as possible. Another important thing is going to be how you present in terms of your voice projection. So vary the pace, firstly, of your presentation. So what typically happens with nerves is you present too quickly. With nerves, you will rush through your presentation and you'll get to an end very quickly. So try to go fast in some places, try to go slow in other places, because what you're trying to do is engage your audience. So also vary the pitch of your voice. So hopefully you can see my voice goes up and down. I don't have a monotone sound throughout. And when I say monotone, it's an example of, hello, my name is Jason. Today I'm going to teach you about presenting with confidence, and we're going to look at these 4 areas. As you can imagine, if someone's presenting to you in that way, it's quite easily for them to lose focus, to lose attention. So varying the pace and the pitch, the speed of your voice allows you to keep the audience's attention as much as possible. Another thing that you can do is use pauses for effect. So sometimes people feel if there's silence in a presentation that something's going wrong. It's not always an issue. Pauses can be very powerful, especially when you're in your presentation and you want to finish on a key point and move on to a second point. Leaving a short pause in between the two allows people to take that on board and be prepared for another one. And another thing that you need to think about is if you do have one, identify your filler word and try to eliminate that. So a filler word is things like obviously, words that with nerves, you put these in to fill silence. And you can see, you probably just heard mine is try to eliminate that as much as possible, because that can distract people from listening to what you're talking about. Some people that have really, bad filler words where they're saying it every 2 seconds, sometimes people will start to check that and count how many times they're saying their filler word as opposed to listening to the actual presentation. So try and think about all of that. But like I said, hopefully if you've thought about everything else and you've got your content and you're knowledgeable about your content, that's only going to help you in a presentation in any case. So that's really your 4 areas. That's what you need to focus on. But in summary, before we go to questions, firstly, you need to know your material. So be knowledgeable on the subject. Don't try to blag your way through and just write a load of notes. Research and know the content inside and out, because that's not only going to give you confidence in your self-delivery, but it's going to establish your right to speak on the subject. Okay, you're going to show people, this is why I'm speaking about. This is why you should listen to me, because I know what I'm talking about. Make sure that you practice your presentation. Okay, don't just go into a presentation and think that you know it. Practice, not just in your head, but practice it out loud. Okay, present it, time yourself. You can have prompt cards to remind you of subjects, but please do not read from them. Be as confident as possible. Be confident in yourself to deliver it. And you'll be confident by following these steps, by knowing your material, developing your content, thinking about your audience. Take your time. Don't appear flustered. Try to relax as much as possible. If you go wrong, it's not an issue. Why is it not an issue? Because the people listening to you don't necessarily know that you've gone wrong. They don't know what you was going to say. So just take your time, compose yourself, and start again. And this is why I think it's key not to memorize a subject. Because if you try to memorize a script and you forget because of nerves, then you are going to really mess up your presentation. Where if you know your material and you just need prompts to refresh your memory, then you're going to be a lot more successful. Be sure to use your own style and your own words. So start to learn that. What is my style? What words will I use? Don't try to imitate and copy great speakers, because then it doesn't come across naturally. You don't look natural in what you're doing. Keep eye contact to engage the audience. Make sure that you're scanning the audience and that you're talking to everyone in that room. Try to eliminate your filler word and ensure that you meet your initial aim. What is the aim or the outcome of this presentation, and have I met that throughout? And of course, I've already said it. I'm going to, say it again. You need to practice as much as possible. The more you practice your presentation beforehand, the more confident and the more succinct it's going to be. And that's what I leave you on. My 6 P's. Preparation, planning, and practice will prevent poor performance. So prepare properly beforehand. Develop that content. Become knowledgeable on the subject. Think about your audience. Think about your resources. Plan how you're going to do that. Plan your time. And then practice. Make sure that you stick to time. Make sure that you know how you're going to say things. Make sure that it's clear. Make sure it's concise. And that will prevent you performing poorly. Like anything, the more you practice, the better that you're going to become on it. Before we go to any questions, you have access to the SEMA Grad Club. This recording will go up on the SEMA Grad Club, and there are a number of different presentations and videos on there to help you with further employability sessions, whether it's assessment centres and other things like that. We have jobs on there at the moment that are live, so lots and lots of graduate opportunities that you can go and apply for after today. And there's also a report that's going to be on there about how to deliver a great financial presentation. So there's lots more help and support for you on the Grad Club. If you're not already signed up to the Grad Club, that's absolutely free for you to access and sign up. So feel free to do that. Hopefully this has been useful. And before I close and before I conclude, just in best practice for presenting, has anyone got any questions at all for me? Okay, I haven't got a question, but I've got a thank you. Glad to hear that's brilliant. So everyone seems happy. Just as before I do conclude, I just want to move on to one more slide. If you wish to stay in touch with me, and you're more than welcome to. So this is my job. I work with universities. I help students in finding careers. If you want to talk to me at any time, you've got my details there. You can feel free to connect with me on Twitter. I'm also very active on LinkedIn in promoting jobs, in sharing employability sessions and content. So feel free to connect with me. Again, you've got my contact details at the bottom if you want to engage and make use of them at all. But just to conclude, presenting is about confidence, okay? Presenting is about developing a lot more than just that self-delivery. You're developing your communication skills, you're developing your time management, you're developing your influencing skills. It's going to be a key employability skills. So before delivering any presentation, make sure you prepare, make sure you plan, and make sure you practice. And that will naturally make you more confident in that delivery. Okay, so thanks again. Again, I wish you a great day. Connect with me online, and hopefully you're going to deliver some great presentations in the near future. Have a good day and speak to you soon. Thank you.